Introduction. A bizarre mystery in the forests of Maine. Among the vast forests of northern Maine in the late 19th century, a group of French-Canadian lumberjacks became the subject of one of the most bizarre and enduring mysteries in medical history. These men exhibited an involuntary, exaggerated response to sudden stimuli, whether it was a loud noise, a sudden movement, or an unexpected command. The condition, later termed jumping Frenchman disorder*, fascinated neurologists, baffled observers, and has since left a lasting legacy as one of the most peculiar disorders ever recorded. While the world of the 19th century was rife with superstition and intrigue surrounding medical phenomena, few cases have sparked as much fascination as the jumping Frenchmen of Maine. These men, far removed from the bustling cities of the East Coast, lived and worked in the rugged, isolated logging camps of Maine. For reasons that remain unclear to this day, they were afflicted by a condition that caused them to involuntarily mimic commands, jump, and shout at even the slightest provocation. The startling symptoms. What made the jumping Frenchman unique? The symptoms of the jumping Frenchman disorder were nothing short of extraordinary. When startled, these men would not only jump or shout, but they would perform actions they were commanded to do in a manner that seemed completely beyond their control. Imagine, for instance, a man wielding an axe in the deep woods. If someone were to sneak up behind him and shout a sudden command like, "Throw it," he would, without hesitation, hurl the tool across the forest, potentially endangering himself or others. Similarly, they could be ordered to hit someone, mimic movements, or repeat phrases, all while fully conscious of their actions but unable to resist. Documenting the disorder. Dr. George Miller Beard's investigation*. In 1878, Dr. George Miller Beard, a pioneering American neurologist, became intrigued by reports of these lumberjacks' strange behavior. Beard was known for his research into what were then considered nervous diseases, and he took a keen interest in the peculiar case of the jumping Frenchman of Maine. Beard's documentation of the disorder is one of the earliest and most comprehensive records of what we would now classify as a form of exaggerated startle response. Beard's observations revealed that the affected men were all part of a close-knit French-Canadian community that had migrated to Maine to work in the lumber industry. These men spent long periods in isolation, working under physically and mentally demanding conditions in the remote forests. While Dr. Beard was able to describe the symptoms and collect anecdotal evidence from witnesses, the underlying cause of the disorder remained elusive. What made these men jump and act in such an uncontrollable manner? Life in 19th century Maine. The harsh realities of lumberjack life*. To truly understand the environment in which the jumping Frenchman lived, it's important to paint a picture of life in northern Maine during the late 1800s. Logging was the lifeblood of the region, and the demand for lumber was enormous, particularly from the rapidly growing cities of New England. Lumberjacks, often referred to as shantymen, lived in rough camps deep in the forests, far from civilization. These camps were not just workplaces but self-contained communities where men lived, ate, slept, and worked together in relative isolation for months at a time. The life of a 19th-century lumberjack was not for the faint of heart. Days began before dawn and ended long after sunset, with men spending the bulk of their time felling trees, preparing timber, and hauling it to nearby rivers. The work was grueling, often dangerous, and performed in harsh conditions. Winters in Maine were brutally cold, and the terrain was unforgiving. Injuries were common, and the isolation meant that medical care was often hours or even days away. It is in this context that the jumping Frenchman disorder emerged. The lumberjacks lived in close quarters, and the daily monotony, combined with the physical exhaustion of their work, may have contributed to the development of the disorder. But what, exactly, triggered such an exaggerated startle response in this particular group of men? Theories and explanations. Why did the Frenchman jump? Several theories have been put forward to explain the jumping Frenchman disorder. While no single explanation has been universally accepted, each offers a unique perspective on this fascinating phenomenon. *** Neurological disorder. Hyperexplexia? One of the leading theories suggests that the jumping Frenchman may have been suffering from a rare neurological condition known as hyperexplexia, sometimes referred to as startle disease. Hyperexplexia is a genetic disorder that affects the startle reflex, causing individuals to react excessively to sudden noises or movements. This condition is marked by an exaggerated startle response, muscle stiffness, and, in some cases, brief periods of paralysis following a startle event. However, despite the similarities between hyperexplexia and the symptoms exhibited by the jumping Frenchman *, there has never been conclusive evidence to link the two. Genetic testing, which could potentially confirm this hypothesis, was not available in the 19th century, and no modern descendants of the affected lumberjacks have been identified for testing. Furthermore, hyperexplexia typically presents at birth or early in life, whereas the jumping Frenchmen seem to develop their symptoms later in adulthood. Psychological and environmental stress *. Another plausible explanation lies in the extreme psychological and physical stress that these men endured. Working in the logging camps was physically exhausting, but the isolation and mental strain of living in the wilderness for extended periods may have also taken a toll on their nervous systems. In this context, the exaggerated startle response could have been a form of psychological reaction to the constant tension and stress that the men were under. Psychological theories suggest that the men may have developed a heightened sensitivity to sudden stimuli as a coping mechanism. With little to no outlets for relaxation, and living in a high-risk environment where accidents and injuries were common, their nervous systems may have become primed for sudden reactions. This would explain why the disorder was particularly pronounced in this isolated, high-stress environment, but it does not account for why it affected only a select group of men in the community. Cultural conditioning and social learning *. Some researchers have proposed that the disorder may have had a cultural or social component. In this theory, the extreme startle response exhibited by the jumping Frenchman was not solely a neurological or psychological condition, but also a behavior that was reinforced through social interaction. The close-knit nature of the French-Canadian logging communities may have created an environment in which the startle response was exaggerated and even encouraged in some cases. Imagine living in a small, isolated community where pranks and sudden surprises were a common form of entertainment. In such a setting, individuals might begin to display exaggerated reactions not only because of neurological or psychological factors, but also because it became an expected response within the social group. Over time, this behavior could have been learned and reinforced, passed down from one generation of lumberjacks to the next. Genetic predisposition *. There is also the possibility of a genetic link. The men affected by the disorder were all of French-Canadian descent, and many of them came from the same small villages in Quebec. This has led some researchers to speculate that there may have been a genetic predisposition to the condition, passed down through the relatively insular community. However, as with the hyperexplexia hypothesis, no genetic markers have been identified to support this theory definitively. Similar phenomena around the world. Startle syndromes in different cultures *. One of the most intriguing aspects of the jumping Frenchman disorder is its similarity to other startle syndromes that have been documented in different parts of the world. These conditions, while varying in specific details, share a common thread of exaggerated and involuntary reactions to sudden stimuli. Latter, the startle reflex in Southeast Asia *. In Malaysia and Indonesia, there is a condition known as *latter*, which primarily affects women. Like the jumping Frenchman *, individuals with *latter* exhibit an exaggerated startle response when surprised. They may mimic the actions or words of others, perform involuntary movements, or repeat phrases. While latter has been most commonly observed in women, it has been noted in men as well. The cultural context of latter is particularly interesting. In Southeast Asia, the condition is often seen as a form of entertainment, with afflicted individuals being startled for amusement. However, the similarities between latter and the jumping Frenchman disorder suggest that there may be a common underlying cause that transcends cultural boundaries. The jumping Danes. In Denmark, there is a similar condition known as the jumping Danes. This disorder, like the jumping Frenchman *, involves an exaggerated startle response, but it is less well documented. The existence of similar startle syndromes in different parts of the world has led some researchers to speculate that these conditions may be related, possibly stemming from a common neurological or genetic root. Other startle syndromes. Startle syndromes are not limited to specific geographic regions. Variations of this condition have been documented in cultures around the world, including Siberian Miriaket *, a disorder in which individuals exhibit an exaggerated startle response and involve